Have you ever messed up so badly you accidentally created a masterpiece? Imagine being a chef, paralyzed by fear, making a massive culinary error that results in one of the world's most famous chocolate desserts. Our story starts in the 1920s, on the picturesque Italian island of Capri. A group of dangerous American gangsters has arrived on the island, and they've demanded a flawless meal from a local kitchen. Leading this group is the most infamous mob boss of them all, Al Capone. The sheer panic of cooking for a man like Capone rattles the chef. His nerves get the better of him, and he completely forgets to add the most basic ingredient to his cake batter, the flour. To see why that's usually a disaster, we have to look at how flour normally behaves. It builds a rigid, grid-like framework inside the dough, acting like solid bricks holding up a building. Without those bricks, the heavy mixture of butter and melted chocolate should have collapsed into a flat puddle of hot chocolate soup. But it didn't. The recipe was saved by an unlikely hero that was already in the bowl, the egg. When eggs take over the job of providing structure, the cake completely shifts. It moves away from being a tall, spongy structure and becomes an incredibly dense, rich confection. Since there's no flour to hold the cake together, the chef has to rely on the eggs to act as the recipe's glue. To do that, the eggs need to be whipped vigorously. As the mixer runs, the whipping motion forces the surrounding air directly into the eggs. Millions of tiny air bubbles multiply and pack tightly together. These bubbles link up to form a strong, interlocking web. They become an invisible scaffolding that spreads throughout the entire bowl. This web is strong enough to catch the heavy melted chocolate and butter, suspending them in place so they don't sink to the bottom. This egg scaffolding is great at trapping air, but it's made of delicate proteins. To survive the harsh heat of the oven, it needs a very specific environment. The biggest threat to this fragile egg structure is the aggressively hot, dry air inside a standard oven. Flour usually absorbs and holds on to moisture. Without it, the oven's dry heat will quickly evaporate the water right out of the eggs, leaving you with a crumbly, dry puck instead of a cake. To protect the cake's internal moisture, bakers use a technique called a water bath. As you can see in this cross-section, you place a wide pan of boiling water directly underneath or next to the cake pan inside the oven. This boiling water turns the oven into a miniature sauna. The resulting steam wraps around the cake, creating a protective shield that cooks the eggs gently without letting their internal moisture escape. Controlling the humidity with the steam room is the only way to protect that delicate egg structure, ensuring the final result is an ultra-moist masterpiece. When the cake comes out of the oven, it immediately shrinks and sinks in the center, forming a cracked crater on the surface. This drop is actually the natural behavior of a flourless structure as it cools down. As the center falls, the cake compresses itself. It squishes those chocolate and butter molecules together into an ultra-dense, fudgy layer. That iconic crinkly crust that forms across the top of the crater is actually the sign of a perfect bake. A flourless cake intentionally trades the towering height of a traditional sponge for intense density and pure chocolate flavor, which brings us back to our terrified chef in Capri, nervously pulling his sunken, flourless mistake out of the oven. He served it to the gangsters, who had no idea the dessert in front of them was the result of a massive kitchen accident. They were blown away by the richness, and their demand for the recipe cemented the creation of the famous torta caprese. To recreate this masterpiece today, you rely entirely on whipped eggs for structural glue and a steam bath to retain moisture. By bravely, or accidentally, leaving out baking's most essential ingredient, you're left with the richest, fudgiest chocolate cake mathematically possible.